So on these, we're still going to start out with the same first step of looking for a greatest common factor. In this case, there is no greatest common factor. And there are three terms, so we need to do the AC factoring. A is what's in front of your squared term, so A is going to be the 2. C is the number that's all by itself, so C is negative 3. We need to multiply those two together. We get 2 times negative 3, so we get negative 6. We now need to look at the factors of negative 6. So we could have a negative 1 and positive 6, negative 2 and positive 3, negative 3 and positive 2, or negative 6 and positive 1. Now we're concerned about the pair of factors going across here that adds up to give us this positive 1 here in the center. And in that case, it's what we have here in orange with a negative 2 and a positive 3. So I'm going to go my 2x squared. Now instead of writing a plus 1x, I'm going to break it apart and write it with each one of these numbers with an x by it. So I'm going to go a negative 2x and then a plus 3x. And you'll notice negative 2x plus 3x is still what we started out with of a positive 1x. And then I still have this minus 3, so I still have to have a minus 3 hanging out afterwards. So we look at the blue. What can I pull out of just the blue? Well, they both have a 2, and I can pull out an x. Then when I look at what's left after I factor that out, that would leave me with an x and a minus 1. I want to do the same idea for the red. What can I pull out of the red? Well, I'm going to pull out a plus 3, or positive 3. Make sure you put positive 3. What are you going to be left with in parentheses? And it's an x plus 1. You know you're on the right track if both parentheses end up being the same. So now I'm going to just recopy this line but change the colors here. You'll notice what's in the parentheses is the same, and that's green. So that's what is my common factor. So I'm going to pull out that green, that's like my common factor, and I'm going to be left then with just the black, and that's what goes in my other set of parentheses. So this is my answer right here. If I were to go ahead and FOIL this out right here, I would get back to my original problem. But I'm trying to factor, that's what I'm going to get to, and this is AC factoring. So try to do the next one in a very similar way. A is going to be the 3, C is the negative 5, I multiply them together and I get negative 15. So now I need to look for factors of negative 15. So I write out all the factors of negative 15, and I'm concerned about the pair of factors that are going to add up to be negative 2. And in this case, it's the negative 5 and the positive 3. They add together to give me that negative 2. So I'm going to put down my 3y squared, and then I'm going to put down my negative 5y and my plus 3y, because negative 5y and plus 3y is still that negative 2y that I had to begin with, still with that minus 5 at the end. Oh, just a second here, I got a mistake. So what can we go ahead and pull out of the blue? Well, I can just pull out a y. What am I left with? I'm left then with a 3y and a minus 5. What can I pull out of the red? Well, you might think, well, there's nothing I can pull out. Well, technically, you can pull out a positive 1. Really doesn't change a whole lot, but it does allow us to factor it the rest of the way. Pulling out a 1 doesn't change it, so I'm still left then with a 3y minus 5. Once again, if both parentheses are the same, you're on the right track. So if I just recopy this, but changing the colors, I have this. The parentheses is my common factor. I'm going to go ahead and pull that parenthesis out of the common factor. Then it's going to leave me with what I have in black. And so I have that factored. And once again, if you wanted to check your answer, FOIL this out to see if you get your original. But that's how you factor with 3 terms. Then we'll go ahead and factor this one here. You'll notice there is no greatest common factor, but there are 2 terms, so I want to see if it's a special. You'll notice I have cubes showing up here, so it's not the differences of squares, but it might be differences of cubes. Could I write this first part as something cubed? Yeah, it's just an AB. By the way, be careful not to get stung since you have a B here. And then you have a 27. Well, 27 is just a 3 cubed. So this is really differences of cubes. So you want to use your differences of cubes formula. And then you want to go what was in the beginning, the AB, all squared, plus what was in the beginning of the AB, multiplied by what was being cubed at the end, which was a 3, plus your 3 squared. First parenthesis doesn't simplify at all. I can apply the squared to the A and to the B, so I get A squared, B squared, plus, and then once again, it's common practice to put the 3 in front of the variables. And then I'm going to write 3 squared as just being 9. Now we need to go ahead and simplify this. Now some of you might be thinking, well, I have an a squared on the top, so I can cross that out and cross that out. Well, that doesn't work. That works if it was an a squared times the top and an a squared times the bottom. Consider 24 over 36. Most of you know that that's going to simplify. When you look at the top, it's a 12 times a 2. Look at the bottom, it's a 12 times a 3. Now, it's 12 times the whole top, 12 times the whole bottom. That's really a special form of 1. So you can cross those out, and then you're really left then with just the 2 over the 3. So if you have things that are multiplied on top, things that are multiplied on the bottom, and they're the same, then you can cross them out. But you can't cross them out until you have it all into multiplication. So what we need to do here with the top is we need to factor it. And you could use that AC factoring technique to factor the top, but you end up then getting an a minus 3 and an a plus 2. And then you could use that AC factoring technique to be able to factor the bottom, and then you end up with an a plus 5 and an a plus 2. Now that we have multiplication top and bottom, because we have 2 things multiplied on the top, we have 2 things multiplied on the bottom, if any of them are the same, then you can cross out those common factors. And in this case, we have that a plus 2 on the top, a plus 2 on the bottom. We can cross those out. So it leaves us on top only with an a minus 3 and an a plus 5. Some of you might even be thinking at this point right here, we have an a on the top and an a on the bottom. We can cross those out. But no, we can't, because it's not a times the whole top and a times the whole bottom. This is all we can do. We can simplify it down to this, but we can't do it anymore. So in factoring fractions like this, factor the top, factor the bottom, cross out any common factors, and what you're left with is your answer.